Hello and welcome everybody. This is Justin the Shops from Stillness in the Storm, and this is Awarewolf Radio. I'm joined by my co-host, Neil Gar from Portal to Ascension. Neil, how are you doing today?
Doing great, brother. How's everything?
Doing good. Another fun-filled week. It's actually been a while since we had a radio show, so we're going to
like 2 weeks.
Yeah. We're back to our normal schedule of bi-weekly shows. So we don't have to do the crazy coronavirus coverage, but lots of stuff is still happening. So we're going to have some news items today, really inspiring stuff actually. And we're also going to have on a guest that I've known about her for about 3 years now. And when I found her work, it was one of those times where you're looking through a bunch of UFO research or whatnot, and then you find something that just like grips you at like an inner child level.
Definitely.
That's what I get from her. Like, man, I remember the first video I saw of her, it was just like holding back tears the whole time because it was so inspiring. So, so yeah, we're going to have Mary Rodwell on today, which is going to be awesome. She's going to come on in about 30 minutes. And we also have got some news items to go over. And I think there's a couple announcements that we wanted to do too. Yes?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't we go ahead and start with some announcements, and then we'll jump into some news items.
All right. So with Portal to Ascension, we're still creating events as usual. We've just had a couple of events in just the last 3 weeks. This weekend on Saturday, we have reintegration with Ultra Terrestrials featuring Celestine Starr, and she was our guest, I think, 2 weeks ago now. We had her on here. So that's going to come up this Saturday. If you guys are interested, you can go to portaltoascension.org, check it out right there. And then on Sunday, we have Wayne Perry's Sound Healing Entrainment, which is pretty awesome because we've done maybe 6 different sound healing classes with him. He particularly focuses on the vocal harmonics and how you can use your voice in order to create, states of consciousness, enlightenment, healing. He even works with celebrities. He's worked with James Franco. He has like pictures with him. He lives in LA. So a lot of these people, Hollywood stars that know about consciousness and how sound can heal, actually go to him and learn these techniques in order to not only be better communicators, but also be able to basically create all types of healing. So that's going to be on Sunday, portaltoascension.org. And the bigger news is that we're actually redesigning our entire platform right now.
Wow. And
in about 1 month, we're going to have a new website out that is going to be epic, man. We literally have features like Netflix has, and just the visual aesthetics are going to be increased quite substantially. Our ability to customize things and customize people's pages and options they have are going to increase. The production level is going to increase. And then that's followed by 2 apps that are going to be released in 2 months from now for the Android and the iPhone that you can cast from your phone to your TV and watch all this footage, even register for ones in real time and get it immediately to view on your phone, or watch the 2,000 hours plus free footage and just cast it to your TV. So the cool thing is that it's an app like many video platforms have, but you don't really need to sign up for it because there's already 2,000 plus hours of footage on there. So you can just download it, use it, cast it to your TV. And that's what we're working on right now. And I'm trying to use quarantine as much as possible to spend as many hours that's needed in order to create this. And I'm hoping, when this is over and we start reintegrating society, Portal to Ascension's level of production is going to be like at the next caliber so that we can really be this organization that we're meant to be for this new paradigm.
Wow, that sounds awesome. I know for me personally, like I like to watch a lot of stuff like that on my phone or the laptop, and casting it onto a big screen can be a pain in the butt sometimes. So that's going to be a huge one right there.
Oh yeah, just having that button where you just click cast, and as long as you're hooked up to the Wi-Fi, it goes on there. Just make it as efficient as possible.
Exactly. Great for, bringing friends and family over. You want to show them something cool, you can just chuck it on the TV real quick. Yeah, I think it's going to be great.
So I'm thinking I want to start doing series, like start having different speakers come on, do 30-minute series every single month or every single week, and just have all these different channels and presentations, documentaries, series, and just keep building content that's valuable to everyone in the world.
Oh yeah, that's the way to go. Well, man, that's great. I'm really excited about that. I can't wait to see how that turns out for sure.
Thanks, brother. So what's up with you?
Well, right now, lots of cool things happening. I am currently developing a new content strategy for Stillness. So, my Stillness project, there's a lot happening there. For those of you who don't know, managing this project has been very challenging. It's kind of like trying to figure out what you're going to cook for dinner while you're sitting there in the grocery store and you have no idea what any of the ingredients are. I mean, it can be really crazy sometimes. So, but I'm able to do a lot of great stuff with it. And now we're going to start a content training platform where we're going to be able to give users and readers more of the content that they love faster and more efficiently, so that I can have more time to write amazing content. Because the thing that I like to bring to the table is like the big picture, like how am I going to link all these pieces together? How am I going to explain like how these events in the news are happening, and showing like good news and things to be hopeful for, because that's kind of what I do, but it takes time to do that. So now I'm going to have some more time for that. So that's really good.
So you're going to have time personally to create these articles, or you have other people handling certain components so you can do that?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have somebody help me with the back end of Stillness, like with the admin work, and they're gonna help me make the like posting and data entry aspect of Stillness a lot more efficient.
Right.
So that I have more mental energy, to vote to creative kind of stuff. So really excited about that. I mean, one of the things that you and we've talked about is a lot of times we'll just get into conversation, and before you know it, we're like into this super amazing conversation, and you're like, man, we should have been recording this, so that's the kind of thing I'm trying to tap into, that energy. So and then the other announcement I have is that Edge of Wonder, my series on Edge of Wonder, Into the Storm, I just finished a mini sub-series of that Ultimate Planet of Draco series about the science of Loosh, where I get into like the psychology of energy harvesting, why it happens, how the mechanics work, what you can do to stop it, these kind of things. And they're actually going to be releasing on YouTube the first episode of that series. So It's a really awesome episode. So if y'all have been, curious about Into the Storm, but have been, trepidatious about signing up, there's going to be a full episode available that'll be coming out, I believe, next week. So keep your eyes peeled for that. stillnessinthestorm.com. I'll be posting something about that. So yeah, excited about that.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. So, okay. That being said, we got some interesting news items for y'all today. So let's jump right into that. First thing, this is something that Q actually posted. This is where I heard about it. And it is an article from stripes.com, although other news sources have posted it. And it's having a hard time loading here. So I'll just go off of memory while the page loads. It's kind of giving me a hard time. There we go. Okay. There you go, Internet. I knew you could do it. All right. So what they're going to do is the article is entitled "Initiative Seeks to Challenge Trump's Online Megaphone." And it sounds a little, mysterious. Like, what does that actually mean? Well, what the article is actually saying, I'll go ahead and read a little bit of it. A new Democratic-aligned political action committee advised by retired Army General Stanley McChrystal, the former head of U.S. forces in Afghanistan, is planning to deploy technology originally developed to counter Islamic State propaganda in service of domestic political goals, to combat online efforts to promote President Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. So that wording sounds a little weird, right? Well, we'll keep reading, you'll get a little more. The group, Defeat Disinfo, will use artificial intelligence and network analysis to map discussion of the president's claims on social media. It will seek to intervene by identifying the most popular counter-narratives and will boost them through a network of more than 3.4 million influencers across the country, in some cases paying users with large followings to take sides against the president.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, they are openly telling people that they are going to create a propaganda scheme to invalidate the president and what he says. And they're actually going to pay people, influencers, to do it. Now, this is a massive admission by the deep state. I mean, they're taking, first of all, the president and his ability to address the public. I mean, that's like a core aspect of a nation. I mean, anywhere you go, like if you elect a leader, the people want to hear from the leader, like what's going on. Now, you might not like Trump or anything like that. And I'm not saying, necessarily I'm the biggest fan of the guy, but when it comes to the principle of the thing, he needs to be able to tell us as the leader what's happening. But these media people, as we know, the deep state media, they want to act as an intermediary. And what's been happening since the coronavirus started, he's been doing these press briefings and he's been telling people one thing, and then you go to the news and you listen to what the news is saying, and it's like completely different. And so what's happening? Well, as I'm sure you've seen, Neil, and other people have seen, the trust in the media has been going down, and Trump's approval ratings have been skyrocketing. You know, so they've lost the plot. They've lost the ability to control the narrative. Right. So now they're turning to literally manipulating what people see and hiring influencers. This is like a alternative media version of the Mockingbird program. Yeah, Project Mockingbird. That's what I'm trying to remember. And so what Project Mockingbird was all about was the CIA in the 60s going to news agencies and literally writing stories for them or telling them what to post. Well, they're still doing that. That program never really ended. Well, now because the media's lost the plot, they have to go to people like us. So you can imagine, Neil, imagine if somebody from General McChrystal's forces came over like, hey, Neil, you need to go and start talking badly about the president. We're going to pay you $2,000 to do it.
Yeah, man. This makes a lot of sense because, you know, let's talk about Trump for a second. People are split, right? In the conscious community, some people love him. Other people like despise him, right? And I don't love or despise him. But when it comes to looking at whether he's legit or not, one thing is for sure, the media completely jumped on bashing him from the beginning, so much so that it threw up so many red flags that you had to be question, like, what is their agenda here, right? And many people who were right before Trump's presidency super anti-media, which is most of these conscious people, then started listening to everything the media would say in regards to Trump, but nothing else. So what is it? Are you anti-media in general, or only anti-media when they're bashing things that you're for, right? So definitely something is going on there, but we know that the ratings for CNN, MSNBC, all this has been going down so much that everyone is going online. The progressive media was where people were going for a while, you know, during Obama and after Obama during the first years of Trump. But then we started noticing the progressive media became one-sided and agenda-oriented and almost was doing the same thing as the mainstream. But if you look at the numbers, you see that everyone's going to influencers to get their news now. People like you and me, and also people that are like Stephen Colbert and those late night comedy shows. That's what people are getting their info. So those late night comedy shows have been taken out. So it only makes sense that looking at the statistics, they would come after influencers that are regular people that people relate to and pay them off, you know, in order for them to start sending their narrative. So this is kind of like, but it's so obvious at the same exact time, right? So I feel, and what we're observing, I believe, is that it's backfiring. People that would never talk crap on like the mainstream media at all, or people that would not even entertain conspiracies, are now openly and freely saying something's up here. I don't know what it is.
Precise. Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think although this is a somewhat dark sign on its face, in the grander scheme, it's a really good sign. Because it means that, you know, the media's lost its stranglehold on the public mind. People are starting to see the writing on the wall that the media's been lying to them, and now they're going to influencers. And, you know, now we're in a situation where as this starts to get rolled out, I have no doubt that people are going to become even more aware of the media manipulation. You know? Right. So, yeah.
I mean, YouTube's the #1 search engine in the world, right? And Google is the #1 search engine, but Google owns YouTube. So the top two are literally owned by Google.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And we can go into like way depth in how Google even first came about and how they were actually creating a search engine for the deep state. And then they became, you know, they were part of the DOD, and then they created this search engine. So it's all connected. But it only makes sense that they would want to hijack the #1 search engine in order to get their information out.
Exactly. You know, I think the other thing that this means is that we're in an election year. They lost the election in 2016. I think that's pretty obvious that the Trump was not designed to go into to office. They wanted Clinton to go in, and now they're pulling all sorts of shenanigans, just like they did then, but even more so because they know that they've lost the plot. So
yeah, and my only differentiation from what you said is I still feel that they still got their person in, maybe. You know what I'm saying? I think the drama has been so intensely and amazingly created that, like, you know, hats off to you, sir, right? Like, they literally have done it so well. And with the fight with Obama and Hillary, and then with Bernie and Hillary, and all this stuff, and then in the end, everyone falls in line. It's almost like they're creating this drama in order for us to choose a side that they still own.
Yeah, exactly. That could certainly be a possibility. Yeah.
But I'm open to all possibilities. I'm just like jaded really from all things politics and expecting anything to change from up down, you know?
Oh yeah. I'll be the first one to say I will love the day when we no longer have to place our faith in people that we aren't sure of. We can place our faith in ourselves and actually do what we want to make the world a better place, you know?
Yes.
So this is all very interesting right now. You know, the fact that they're openly saying that they're going to attack Trump, what Trump is saying, to me suggests that, you know, maybe there's some truth to what Trump's saying. And frankly, if you look at what he's been saying about the lockdown and that we don't need to be in a lockdown, and he's trying to reopen the economy, and all of the deep state Dems are saying we can't do this, you know, and then you look at the coronavirus numbers and that there's really no reason to have a lockdown or a quarantine. It starts to paint a very interesting picture. So, I'd say some interesting things happening there. Let's get right into the next one. This is some good news now. Another thing Trump did somewhat recently is under the coronavirus situation, it's an emergency. He invoked emergency power, so we declared a state of emergency. And what that does for him lawfully is it changes the lawful landscape. So when we're in an emergency situation, there are certain things that he has the power to do that he did not have the power to do before. That's why he invoked the Defense Production Act. And he also mobilized the military to secure the border, so to prevent people from coming in that had coronavirus potentially, and to start taking down the deep state supply lines. And one of the ways that the deep state funds itself is through drug trafficking, human trafficking, shadow banking, all sorts of stuff. So what has been happening, and this is the headline of the story, U.S. carries out massive military operation in the Caribbean, confiscates 3 tons of cocaine from narco dictatorship in Venezuela. So the drug trade has been huge. As everybody knows, the drug trade is used to do a lot of things. And like I said, it funds the deep state. Well, now there's been a massive bust. And so all of this, I would argue, is indications that the supply lines of the deep state are being cut. You know, their funding is getting marginalized in a big way. So some good news there. Let's see, we got another one here. Headline, Dr. Fauci likely broke U.S. regulations and U.S. law when he funded Wuhan lab to continue coronavirus projects that were banned in U.S. in 2014. This is a huge one. So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Fauci, he's the one of the people heading the coronavirus task force that Trump put together. He's also the guy that recommended shutting the economy down and instituting a lockdown and a quarantine. Now, some of you may not know that Dr. Fauci actually, through his oversight when he was working for the NIAID, he funded a Wuhan lab, the Wuhan lab in question, the Wuhan lab that everybody in the intelligence community thinks where the virus came from. He funded that Wuhan lab back in 2014 to the tune of $3.6 million. So, I mean, that is some very interesting connections. You know, first of all, what the heck are we doing developing bioweapons in China for in the first place? Secondly, why is the head of the NIAID funding these bioweapons projects?
Right.
You know, and thirdly, why is it that this same man who's likely got a conflict of interest within all this is now the person who's leading the charge when it comes to recommending things and policies, this situation? So that is a smoking gun story. We are definitely going to see a lot more come out about that in the coming weeks. So.
And this is not just, this isn't a story just from an alternative media site that has no trail. This is 100% real and has been tracked and is in regular documentaries and is even on the mainstream now, because they're even questioning it. And I think some mainstream pundits that are agenda oriented still don't really think that, some sort of elite organization could be out there trying to do this to us, but the evidence is showing that it is. And I just watched the 15-20 minute documentary called The Plandemic.
I haven't seen that one yet. No, but I've heard about it. Yeah.
Everyone was posting it. Laura Eisenhower was posting it. All these people were sending me messages with it. So I just put it in the background today. And it's person that used to work with Dr. Fauci, and basically was assisting him with having a corrupt organization to fund vaccines in order to create a forced vaccine agenda, right?
Wow.
And they asked her, well, do you think this vaccine is natural? This is a credible source, a credible person that actually worked with him. And she goes like, well, it is natural, but the unnatural component is how fast it evolved from what it was originally during SARS-1 up until now, because it's the same thing. So then they asked her, do you think it was made in a lab? And she goes, there's no way. She basically explained like the dynamics between the biological makeup of it. And she goes, honestly, there's no way that it could have been created without a lab. It couldn't have evolved in this time that it did without some sort of basically assistance in order to get it to that point. And there's many other things that are smoking guns in there, but it's straight up like truth now. And even on mainstream media, on MSNBC, even, to speak about one in particular, they're even saying that we used to think that it came from the wet animal district in Wuhan and, could have come from a bat, but now we're finding out that there's a lab that deals with bioweapons and stuff or whatever it is in Wuhan. And we're doing research to see if it was, released from there, and it could have possibly been released accidentally. Right? So, and then just to add to that, the other day, are you familiar with the Fruta Man? The Fruta Man?
The Fruta Man?
Yeah, the fruit man. The fruit man on the side of the street.
Oh, the fruit. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, like a lot of places, especially in areas with like a higher population of Mexicans, right? There'll be like fruit stands around, And the other day, two days ago, I go to get some fruit after I left the bank, and I'm talking to this dude, and after 10 minutes of trying to have a conversation in Spanish, he starts speaking English. I'm realizing we could have just talked the whole time, right? So I'm all like, but I'm like practicing my Spanish. And then he goes to me, so what do you think about this whole pandemic coronavirus thing? And I'm all, I don't know, man, I'm just observing, I think that there's a lot they're not telling us, right? And then he said to me that he thinks that it was created and released on us, right? And then I said, do a lot of people think this way? And he goes, yes. So his family members, like his cousins and everybody. So that made me realize that people that aren't even into like, hey, this is obvious that it's coming this way because we're doing all this research, are just picking up on the fact that something is weird is going on right now, and there's no way that this could be natural. It seems like this is imposed on us. And if it is imposed on us, what does that mean for our kids and our future? That's like, yes. So like, if they can just do this to us like this, what does it mean for us? Like, should we continue back to how it was? Do we even want that to be there anymore? Like, what do we do? So everything that they do backfires. Yes. It's happened all the time. We can probably call out like 911, like on all these other ones, and we could just come to a whole episode on how it backfired on them. Right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And that's what's pretty much happening, which goes to show that, the game is rigged in order to expose this evidence and truth. Every time they try to do something bad, it's going to just it's just going to help wake more people up. And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, precisely. I couldn't agree more. I think that is fantastic news because that's what I'm seeing too. A lot of people, a lot of mainstream people, my neighbor across the street, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. He's a retired Marine, he's not like into conspiracies or anything like that, but I was just asking him what he thought. And he says, I don't know, it sounds kind of weird. Like we have this massive lockdown, but it's no worse than the flu and the economy's been destroyed. And it seems like there's some kind of ulterior motive happening here. And so, like you said, I mean, for me personally, I think the deep state lost the plot a long time ago. Studying the deep state and how they work, I actually talk about this in Into the Storm. I was just talking about all this. They have to use so much trauma-based mind control and negative emotional motivation to get people to play that they don't have the ability to be creative. You can't be spontaneous when you're in that situation. Yes, you got to plan everything meticulously. But let's face it, the plans fluctuates. And these guys, they have been off their plan for like decades. They lost the plot a long time ago. So what we're seeing right now is I think we're seeing exactly what needs to happen to wake people up. I mean, what a beautiful scenario,
up.
you know? So
yeah. And we had a couple of people asking where they can see that documentary. So if you're a friend of mine on Facebook, go to my page. My personal page is there. Otherwise, I think you can just go to YouTube and type in the Plandemic, and it's like under 20 minutes long. So I do recommend people checking it out.
Yeah, great. Check it out there. I'll also be posting on Stillness at some point, so you can check it out there. So great. All right. Well, yeah. The one other thing I'll mention, just a quick news item, I think it's pretty important. So as people know, there's Joe Biden has been accused of sexual misconduct by Tara Reade back in the 90s. And it seems like there's something very interesting happening. What it seems like is happening is that he is being politically sacrificed. I've been talking about this on my Twitter. So what do I mean by that? Well, that Biden, let's face it, anybody who's got half a clue recognizes that Biden is not the best person to be going up against Trump. You know, so what are they going to do? Are they going to really let this guy who can barely form coherent sentences go up against somebody like Trump? No way in hell. What I think they're doing is they're manufacturing an event. What are they going to do? They are going to present allegations. Those allegations might actually be true. So it might have been Tara Reade doing this on her own. And instead of the deep state squashing that, you know, they could have done all sorts of things like take her out before any of this happened, but they didn't do that. I think what they're going to do is they're going to have a week or two where Biden denies everything and we create this division of two sides. You already see it. You got people openly saying how it doesn't matter if Joe Biden like is a rapist and fondles little girls. They hate Trump so much that they want him to be the president. Like, that is insane. That is
like the head of the Me Too movement, Alyssa Milano.
Exactly.
The fake Me Too movement.
Exactly.
The hijacked version.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, I mean, what I think is going to happen is they're going to delay this, or what could happen is they're going to have this carried out where there's a little bit disagreement, and then some new evidence is going to come on the table that unquestionably proves that Joe Biden, you know, either did those horrible things to Tara Reade or maybe even did horrible things to other people.
Yeah.
And I suspect that the person that they might come out with that is either Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton. Because if she comes out, or one of those two people come out, she'll be seen as a hero by women. She'll gain all the support that Biden had. And then now people will be demanding, and they're already starting to do it. They've already formed a committee to see about how they can get Michelle Obama on the ticket for this coming election.
Yeah, and it makes it a credible source, because if anybody else says it, people wouldn't believe it. But somebody that has more respect than Biden, or Biden's respect is based off even.
Precisely. I mean, yeah, Mika Brzezinski did an interview over the weekend, and she just ripped into him. And from what it looked like to me, he got caught off guard. They did not tell him what was going to happen, and he's sitting there like, Jesus, I'm literally being outed right here on national TV. So
yeah, and they were friends before, Mika, right? Like, they really were into Biden. So
exactly. So quite interesting. Something to keep your eye on, everybody.
And just to add to that, guys, you should check out, I forget what episode it is, but did a segment called "Who the Heck is Biden?" I think it was freaking awesome and hella funny.
Oh, really?
So, no, we did it together. Who the heck?
Yeah. Yes.
You're like, that, yep. And then so that was like basically just like the evidence for Biden not really being a good candidate, right?
Yes.
And the fact that they could have been setting Trump up to win all along just by even thinking that they could pick him, because yeah, exactly. Like, Trump's can communicate much better than he can and is more aggressive. Like, Biden's just gonna retreat into his shell, right? So, and then this whole virus thing and how it's affecting our voting, there's just too many inconsistencies here, too many things happening, that who's doing it and who's trying to like maybe postpone the election, or something is happening. We just don't know what exactly yet, right?
Precisely.
And time will tell.
Yep, exactly. It's going to be probably a year where there are things going to be happening that nobody thought were possible. So keep an eye on all that. All right, well, let's go ahead and get right into our guests. So Mary Rodwell is recognized internationally as one of Australia's leading researchers and writers in UFO and contact phenomena. Mary is the author of the highly acclaimed book, Awakening: How Extraterrestrial Contact Can Transform Your Life, which was released in 2002. And she's a producer of EBE award-winning documentaries such as Expressions of ET Contact, A Visual Blueprint, and Expressions of ET Contact, A Communication and Healing Blueprint. Mary is also the founder and principal of the Australian Close Encounters Resource Network, which was established in 1997, and to provide professional counseling support, hypnotherapy, and information to individuals and their families with anomalous paranormal experiences. Now, as I was mentioning, just a little personal bio here, when I saw Mary's work, I was just floored. And, you know, Mary brings a whole side to this that incorporates children, inspiration, and the Starseeds is another big thing. So I'm really excited to have you on here, Mary. Welcome to the show.
Let's unmute you. There we go.
Oh, all right. Hi, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. In this crazy, crazy B movie we call life.
I know, right? It's morning over there, right?
That's correct, yes. So I'm just had my coffee. So all being well, I can sound reasonably coherent, Neil.
That's wonderful.
So how's everything going over there for you? Are you in quarantine as well?
Yes, but not quite the same as most, simply because I'm in a little quiet rural town, which is a tourist town, you know, a bit off the grid. So we're a lot more relaxed here, you know, in terms of, you know, social distancing and what have you. Everyone does it a bit with tongue in cheek here a little bit, you know, it's, oh yeah, hold on a minute. Just, you know, we're inclined to do a little bit of that. But so I'm fortunate because it hasn't really impacted too much on me at all, other than the fact that I'm busier than I've ever been, because lots of people are at home. And what's brilliant about it, it's getting people to stop and to think and to start saying what's okay for me now, what isn't okay, what's going on, what does this mean? So it's been really a great time for people to reflect on what's important at the moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It seems to be acting as a great way for people to think and contemplate, which they weren't able to do before. So,
right.
Yeah. What, given your experience and everything, do you think that this event is somehow being guided or manipulated or enforced by extraterrestrial forces?
I definitely think it's manipulated. That, I think, goes without saying. The more research that I've done is showing me from multiple levels that, you know, mainstream media, quite honestly, is a real concern for me because of what they're saying. And also the spokespeople, when you go into it from a medical science background, which, you know, I was a nurse, I was a midwife. Some of the things they're saying about what's going on and what we need to do are actually not accurate at all. And we've got nurses, we've got doctors coming out now saying, you know, there is a lot of things that we're being asked as protocols that aren't actually true or relevant, including the fact that this isn't an airborne thing anyway, that there's only 3 different illnesses that are airborne, and one's Ebola, the other one is TB, and the other one's smallpox. So the only way you can get this, literally, is if you've got mucus on you from someone, or nasal, anything from your nose literally lands on you. So this whole nonsense about it being in the air and to keep you inside is ludicrous, because actually outside you're more likely to have less chance of contracting. Anyway, I mean, this is just logical. You know, this is common sense. You know, so I get frustrated when I hear the nonsense that is being promoted, and from people who should know better. But beyond that, I will share something with you that I was told only a few weeks ago by a 10-year-old who initially had contacted me, and his father had, because this is an amazing young man who said that he's visited by light beings. They come from a planet of light. He comes from there. He talked about instantly manifesting on that planet. What he said about this planet was that it's a bit of a game, his words. And he explained to me that here it's much harder to manifest. And I said, so what do you make of what's going on now? Oh, Mary, he said, this is the reset. That was his exact word. This is the reset.
Wow.
And he said before, this is all to do with awakening activation for us as we go to another level of awareness. And this is the 10-year-old explained. And it wasn't worrying him. It was just, can't you see? Can't you see what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
So that made a great deal of sense to me. And what I'm seeing is exactly that. The numbers of people that are contacting me that are literally looking at things now from a completely different perspective. But in terms of orchestration, I was told by many different individuals that they knew something big was going to happen this year. February was given as one date and June was given to me as another. Whether or not something happens in June that is even more exacerbating this is hard to know. But of all the things that are going on now, I think the most important thing is to trust yourself and trust your resonance to truth, because there are so many theories out there about the layers to this. And of course, there are layers to this. You know, there's a lot of things being brought in to say to people, look at your life, look at what's happening, look at what is being created around you in terms of controls to stop you from being who you are. And the great thing is people eventually, when their back's against the wall, then they start doing something. And I think people are starting to feel their backs against the wall. And it's human nature. We wait till we're really in a difficult place before we actually start doing something. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we've come here, haven't we, Neil, for this. This is what this is all about.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I've been saying for a while now that until our comfort level is rocked, we're pretty much not going to take action. And that's what's happened, especially in countries where you're not used to protesting, right? And standing up for your rights. And even some mainstream media outlets have mentioned, actually alternative media outlets online have mentioned that right now, this generation is one of the few generations that have ever existed in the history of the US, let's just say the US, that haven't really had to sacrifice anything for the masses, you know, and the collective. So we're not even used to that. So when we're asked to stay at home and do that, people aren't used to having any of these rights taken away from them. Whereas in the past, you know, in Vietnam, they could draft you, you know? Yeah. So it is a collective dark night of the soul. But I just was on a podcast the other day and there was an astrologer on there with us. And she said, well, Pluto just went in retrograde on April 25th. And Pluto in retrograde symbolizes the dark night of the soul and a collective dark night. And then as soon as June hits, Pluto goes direct with conjunct Jupiter. And Pluto and Jupiter conjunct signify extreme abundance. And what's going on right now? Dark night of the soul. We're all going through this phase where we're thinking that we're in lack and we don't have enough. But then at the end of it all, we realize we had more than enough to begin with, right? So maybe the stars are really dictating what's happening right now.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So June will be, from an astrological point of view, June actually will be significant in that case.
So this child that you connected with, I'm curious to learn a little more. How did you, like, you work with other children too, right? So how do you connect with them, and how do they reach out to you and you get this information?
Neil, it's multiple ways. Sometimes it's the parent that's either, you know, read my book or they've met someone else who has met me or knows about my work. Sometimes it's via someone else who'll say, I know of a child that's very different. And I'm sure the parents would like to know more about your research. So it's multiple ways, really. One of the most important things with that, Neil, for me, is often parents feel very isolated with their very aware child. The child themselves doesn't connect to their own peer group because they're so different and their awareness is so different. So some of the networking I do is actually to connect parents and children so that they can have someone else that gets what is going on for them as well. And this has become more and more important because of that feeling of being so different and feeling isolated. And there are many of them that are homeschooled because the parents are aware and realize what conventional schooling might do or how it might damage them in some way or another. So for me, that's been a really important part of the support, really. The other wonderful thing is the fact that what I get from them is this total openness to what's going on for them and how they understand themselves. And one of the ones that it relates very much to now in terms of symbology was a lady who was a former air hostess who's got her own experiences, but she was telling me about her 10-year-old son recently, who'd had some dreams about beings that had wings, looked a bit like a butterfly almost. These beings that were talking to him and taking him into a kind of school, teaching him things. And the interesting thing was, the mother said, there's a crop circle in the Netherlands that has this like butterfly man as well. At the same time, he was getting this information from these beings. And the fascinating thing was, it was all to do with the awakening. And one of the interesting things around here, particularly over the last 2 or 3 weeks, is we've had absolutely clouds of butterflies, clouds of them, like you're in, you know, one of these special places where they have all the butterflies, you know, this kind of, you know what I mean? You can go to butterfly parks and things. They've been clouds of them here, absolutely clouds of them. So, and for me, butterfly is all about the crystal. It's all about the awakening. It's all about new life, transformation, all those kinds of things. So putting those together is quite, I believe, very, very significant.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was watching a clip of, what is it? The Earth Stood Still. And the new one with Keanu Reeves, and it was just a clip on Twitter, and they were talking about, you know, how Klaatu, the character in the movie, had to come to Earth during this time of transition, and, you know, they were going to basically just wipe everybody out because they were going to threaten the cosmos. But the other character that he was talking to was saying, well, no, that's during these times when it seems like everything's falling apart where we have the greatest opportunity to grow. And I thought, you know, boy, is that such a poignant thing to say in this current time. You know, we have all of this time available to us, and people the things that they've been busy with, because I'm sure you know, when you're so busy doing 50 things, you can't have time to grow and heal because you're out here all the time and you need to go inside. And so, you know, it seems like there are forces that are allowing us and creating these opportunities for us to do that. Would you say that a lot of the people you've been in contact with have been experiencing changes and shifts during this time of coronavirus and the quarantine?
Actually, it's been quite interesting, the number of people that have contacted me that are having even more, their experience of almost exponentially changed and become a lot more in their face almost. It's like, you know, I've always had certain contacts, but recently it's been really in front of me. I feel, some will say, I feel like the veils are lifting, that, you know, they aware more and more of their connection to the cosmos, connection to their star family, as we call it, you know, and wanting to know more about how to operate with that awareness and whatever. So the shift has been quite, you know, quite remarkable. One of the things that comes to me and reminds me of something Dr. Lena Olson experienced, who I mention a lot in my books, who is a molecular biologist who talks about the letter children, or the letter, because she was ADHD, a little bit Asperger's, etc. And she said to me, Mary, I was told that we're separating out into 2 frequencies, low frequency people and high frequency people. We're going to be making a choice about what frequency we want to be in this particular incarnation. And it's almost like we're noticing this polarity where you've got those that want to believe the narrative, that actually completely are there. And there's the others that say, this isn't right, this doesn't feel right, doesn't make any sense to me, and what have you. And I think that's what's really going on multiple levels now, is that sense of people either saying, this is what I choose now, or this is what I choose. And I'm seeing it when I walk down the street, the ones that absolutely, you know, are like this, and the other one's saying, this isn't right, doesn't feel right.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
really.
it is a call to action for a lot of people, right? Like people are, I had conversations with some of my friends that are more confident now than they've ever been during this time. And it's like, almost like, okay, this is game time. Well, let me put this stuff aside, deal with my issues, deal with my insecurities, and actually fully invest myself into this work, because what I thought was the conventional, what I identified with as before, has just been taken from, you know, taken from beneath us. And many people who have identified with their roles and positions in society are now not able to do that anymore. So who are you if you aren't what you think you were, right? So, but a lot of people were waiting for that moment at the same time. So what you're talking about is a splitting of the worlds. And we've heard that, for quite some time with many speakers. I want to hear a little bit more about that. Do you feel, because some people have said that we would be at different frequencies, and then at one moment we might just not even see the other individuals because the frequency range will be so different, but we might see them as even passing away, but really that's just our perception, when truly in their reality they never passed away, they just kind of transition to another reality. Have you come across any other conversations with people that have addressed that?
Yes, not just adults, of course, the children too talk about the new earth. And one of the young men, who was 16 at the time, said, the new earth is already there, Mary. It's waiting for us. Mm-hmm. Almost like when we shift, we'll shift into this new reality, is the way that he described it. And it's already, as he said, it's already there. So there's other children that have talked about us being picked up and taken somewhere. So I think a lot depends on the awareness and perception and the understanding of the individual, is how they're interpreting this information. But as you say, some are saying that we literally will disappear and it will no longer be our reality. Others are saying that we will just be aware of both, that we'll be able to operate in both. When I've tuned in, to me, it's almost like the sense is you can't understand yet, because you don't have the information you need to totally understand what is actually happening. And that is frustrating, but at the same time, I've looked back on 5 years ago, and my understanding 10 years ago, knowing that what I understand now was nothing like how I understood it 10 years ago. And I've got a sense that the event, as some are calling it, the actual event, will be so dramatic and so paradigm shifting that we can't yet grasp what exactly that is.
Yeah.
So I'm content with that. I'm content to go with the adventure.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I've heard of the split Earth concept. I've wondered myself, is this going to be like a flash of light where all of a sudden we'll be on two different worlds, or will we be all here and it's more of a split in consciousness? I mean, I know psychologically that one of the reasons that the deep state use these events like what we're experiencing right now is that it shakes us up and it changes our behaviors and our habits. And then in the absence of those habits, like you were suggesting, Neil, we get identified with these habits. But when they're not there anymore, now you're open and receptive. And so I think they use that principle because it's a principle that the universe uses to cause growth to happen. And it seems like what we're experiencing now is these primordial steps of some massive awakening event that seems to be happening. So it's really encouraging to hear that, you're hearing from the starseeds on the ground, the boots on the ground folks, as it were, that they are getting this information that there really is this other, world ahead of us. Do you think that these contacts that these children are making are from one source, or is it like a spectrum of different sources and star nations? What's some of your take on that?
Well, it's a good question. What I'm hearing from the children is that they are coming from all different parts of the cosmos and interdimensionally as well. One young man was telling me that the planet he came from, and he drew the image of this humanoid that was blue-skinned with certain symbols that he understood the symbols of. He said he's come here as a very first incarnation on Earth, and his job is as a center seed, which is he's connecting to the planet. And he said he's here to help with all the pollution, to assist with that part of the planet that's our polluted planet. Here's another one that says that consciously he can see interdimensionally, for example. A 7-year-old was explaining to me that he can go to the 9th dimension, the little grey beings can only go as far as the 6th dimension. But if he wants to go to another planet, he can go to another planet as long as he knows its mathematical number, frequency, and he goes through things, portals like the runes. He uses the runes and they're the portal. And as long as he's got the frequency or number, he can actually visit those planets. So we're talking about very aware children that have this expanded understanding of their multidimensional abilities, what they can do with their consciousness. And they're, you know, on the planet everywhere. This is not unique. That's the one thing that, you know, gives me so much hope for this planet, is that I honestly believe these aware souls, and as I say, they're coming, some are telling me they come from other dimensions and what have you, but some of them also, some of these star beings, I'll call them, their star soul, is coming as walk-ins as well. One lady explained to me that she was a walk-in after multiple near-death experiences, and where she comes from is the 13th dimension. She is energy, she is consciousness. They have no form, but she said, the reason I've come in as a walk-in is because it's very hard to communicate with humans in a form they're not comfortable with. So part of the reason we're coming in human form is so that we can relate to you, relate to us, etc., etc. But you know, there are so many that are talking about being walk-ins now, walk-in souls, that are coming in from, again, other dimensions. So some of them are non-physical and some of them are from our own cosmos and what have you as well. So we've got this influx of souls from all over, you know, the cosmos, that are coming in with jobs to do, with the mission. They're talking about, they've come here to help with the shift in humanity. And I say to people when they feel in that dark place and they're thinking, you know, how can we change this? How can we, you know, transform this planet into what we know it can be? I say to them, these souls didn't come in for a waste of to do. So if we trust in that, and we're here for the same purpose, we wouldn't have bothered to incarnate if, in fact, we didn't know that we were going to achieve it. And that's what I want to.
Right, that's beautiful. I like the quote that I have no idea who said it, but I've heard it many times, you know, in the last 20 years, is I remember now. The destination has already been chosen. It's the journey that counts. And that's actually from the Rig Veda, but many people have said it. And it's basically saying we're all going to end up where we're going to end up. And it's beautiful. Like we're ascending back to this oneness. So don't trip about where you're going to end up, because we're all ending up there. Just experience and enjoy the journey right now, which is basically saying it's the paradox. The end result, we know what's going to happen, but the moment is what really matters, right? So Dolores Cannon said, talked about the law of non-interference. Many people have talked about it, right? Like the prime directive, not to interfere with I guess, lower dimensional beings. And so she mentioned that many like starseeds, extraterrestrials, all types of angelic beings were basically incarnating as humans, because the only way to have a direct effect on humanity was to incarnate as one. So when there was like a call out, she says during the atomic age, this happened, when there was a call out to the universe saying, like the siren went off, like, oh, we need to put these guys in check. All of a sudden there was an influx of these interdimensional souls coming to this planet, because they couldn't just come and like interfere with our free will. But if you're one of us, you can engage in our free will. Have you come across information like that? Seems like you may have.
Oh, absolutely. And interestingly, how a lot of the children and teenagers identify as hybrids, in the sense that they're aware of their connection to various beings they're interacting with. And I often talk about this 8-year-old that explained that his real family was the mantis beings, that they were his ancestors, that when he dies, he will go back to being a mantis. And he explained that when he goes on board craft sometimes, he will evaporate, was his term, evaporate into a mantis form for a time to do a particular task, and then come back to his human body. So he was very aware that he sometimes would be in another form. And there are many accounts that I've had when I've worked with people in hypnosis where they will be in another form on board craft. Like one young lady told me that she was in a grey form as a scientist on board craft doing a task. And I said, well, where's your human body? And she said, oh, it's over there to one side of her. And I said, so how do you get back into your human body? And she explained this ball of light traveling from the grey form container back into a human body. So many of them are aware of their connection to these different beings. And I remember one lady telling me her 5-year-old said to her, you know, you're not my real mummy. My mummy's in space. And she was so shocked by that. She says, what do you mean? Can you draw what you mean? And the little girl said, no, I can't draw it because you would be scared. So she was very clear that a mum wouldn't handle it. And the thing is, that's not the only time I've heard it though, Neil. I've heard others say that the child has said to them, you're not my real parents. My real parents are in space, but you're just here to look after me.
That's amazing.
Wow. Fascinating. You know, that leaves me to wondering, Mary, I'm sure parents or people in general would love to know what are some of the signs that you can look for if if you've just recently had a child or you've got a youngster that would indicate that they might be having some of these contact experiences. It might even be a starseed.
It's a good question. Some parents already have a sense because of their own experiences and their own awareness that the child is different, and they will maybe get a download saying this child isn't yours, although you'll be looking after it. This child is going to have certain awareness. So they may get that intuitively through their own contacts, because most of these children appear to be born to those that have already had some form of connection to our star ancestors or whatever.
Right.
But the other thing is that the child seems to be very awake and very aware very early. Sometimes they're advanced in their development as well. You know, they sort of walk, talk earlier than and what have you. They may come out with unusual things, talking about their special friends that visit them, that maybe they may talk about them being taking them up onto spacecraft or this kind of thing. And that's very common, 3-4 years old, where one little boy of 3 was saying to his mum when she said, you've got to get up to go to school. And he said, but I've already been to school. And she said, what do you mean? Well, last night I was already at school, he said, you know, he'd obviously gone out of body and been taken to his school on board spacecraft. So that even when they're really young, they'll come out with unusual statements. They may also, you know, talk about they're able to heal you and offer you healing, for example. I mean, this kind of thing. I think the one that stands out particularly is a woman that wrote to me and said, my daughter's 3 years old. She's been telepathic since birth. And she said, you know, with anyone around us, she will pick up information from them. And, you know, she'll understand what's going on with them. She's, Mary, the hardest thing for me is she's now 3. She's still doing it. And she said, have you any idea how hard it is to monitor your thoughts? Wow. Because you know the daughter's going to be picking it up. Wow. So this really, if you like, forcing us to really look at our own work on our own selves, and what are we thinking? What is it we're projecting that these aware children can pick up? I remember one 9-year-old explaining to me when I was talking to his father, can I speak to Mary? And I said, you know, what is it that you'd like to say? Or, you know, what is it you want to say to me? And he said, I said, why is it me that you want to talk to? And he said, well, it's because of your frequency. Mm-hmm. It wasn't because you look nice. It was because of your frequency. So you can't con these kids. You can't pretend in front of them. I was speaking to a 7-year-old when I was in the US who explained to me that he first said, do you want to hear me speaking dolphin? So I said, that would be good. So he proceeds to speak dolphin to me. And then he says, you know, I can tell when people are lying and when they tell the truth. So I said, so how does that feel to you? You know, when how do you know? And he said, well, he says, when they're lying, I go all cold. When they tell the truth, I feel warm. Mm-hmm. So his way of interpreting his resonance was like that. These are the things normal children, as quote unquote, right, normal, so-called normal children, don't say. They don't say. Yeah. So it's right, all these kinds of things that guide you into my child is different. Yes.
Right.
If you're thinking that, you're probably right.
Right. So I'm curious to know, since you've worked with children of all ages, have you, because from my understanding, we are all born with complete awareness, right? Whether it's the DMT in our brain, our third eye's being opened, or our brains aren't fully conditioned yet. And then as we grow older, traumas, experiences kind of close that off, right? And so I'm assuming that we all have that potential when we're born, but then this reality is designed to give us amnesia. So many people, Bashar, Dolores, so many people call this planet of amnesia, right? Have you been dealing with any children and kind of witnessed the amnesia take hold, that they knew things about their reality, but as they grew older, they started forgetting it?
Neil, it's a very good question. And yes, the parents have told me that, because they would say when they were 3 or 4 or 5, they'd talk about this, they'd talk about going to other planets, they would talk about what they learned, they would talk about all these things. But after a few years of 3D, then they would mention the same thing to them, and they'd say, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. And so there is absolutely no question that our 3D programming literally, I believe, programs them out of their multidimensional awareness. And one of the reasons I talk about ADHD and Asperger's and dyslexia is that I believe that's a program that has been created so they are wired differently, so they are harder to program, because the intelligences know what happened on this planet. Say, right, we know how they get shut down. We'll make it harder to program them. So what do you get with ADHD? You get them giving them Ritalins now to slow them down so they can be programmed, because they are wired differently. And I remember another wonderful gentleman, Neil Gold in Hong Kong, who was in his 50s when he realized that he was ADHD, and he wrote the book Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind. He explained to me that when he was a child, he always saw things in a multidimensional way and could make sense of them. And he said, I realized as I got older that this ADHD, he retranslated into always dialed into higher dimensions, because they are. And what we do on this planet is we try and shut that down so that they can be programmed out of their multidimensionality. And I believe the dyslexia, certain forms of autism, like Asperger's, are a way of the brain being, if you like, the brain itself, I think, has been changed in some way to make it harder for these children to be programmed. And I think that's deliberate. I think that's a deliberate act, because many of those that have had encounters, we know it's intergenerational, that when I get the parents writing about their own experience, number of times they'll say, oh, my child is ADHD, or my child has Asperger's, or my child has dyslexia. And it was incredible, the number of those that were having children that were having that kind of so-called label of dysfunction. When Dr. Lena Olson, a molecular biologist, said she doesn't believe it's faulty genes at all, that this is the new human. This is the human that is born with more protocols to stop that programming that shuts us all down and shut all of us down into believing that unless we can touch it, feel it, see it, hear it, it's not real. But the interesting thing is that the new children also have, they have a more sensitivity to touch. Dr. Olson says at least 6 times as much sensitivity. Their hearing acuity is far more expanded. Their eyesight, they're able to see orbs, spirits, energy fields, all this kind of thing, because they are able to see more of the visual spectrum. So those senses are also enhanced, but also their multidimensional awareness and connection to their star family.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a question. You know, you were talking about the conditions of these children, and it occurred to me possibly that are all the children have environments as far as like family where they aren't in an abusive situation, or is there some children that are in not so great situations and others that are? Any insight there?
Yes. And it's interesting, when I was working with a number of families, when I went to the US, I had a small group for 3 days of families, and you get one parent with their child coming, some with both parents. What I found, a lot of my work was supporting the parents to support the children, because the children were okay as long as a parent believed them, listened to them, and supported their needs. The parents may have issues with their partner who didn't get it, didn't understand, didn't want to understand, or found it was too confronting. So their relationships with their children were also compromised, if you like, by one parent maybe not wanting to understand for multiple different reasons, or being confronted by it or whatever. Sometimes it was even the grandparent that was seeing that in the grandchild and saying, the parents have got no idea about this child, but I can see it. So getting back to the soul journey, it seems that some souls have chosen to incarnate into an environment where they are challenged. And this is part of what I think we've come in choosing our own particular mission, but also our own spiritual mandate. So some will have a family that don't get them at all, and they have to deal with that. They have to manage that, because I think that's part of their mandate, to help others that are in that situation. Some highly traumatized, have had terrifically traumatic childhoods, for example. And my sense is that for those that have that, they are going to be dealing with that as part of their mandate in the greater community. So, okay, so how did you deal with it? How did you manage it? Because you're going to be dealing with a lot of people that are not going to want to hear you, are going to honor your experience. And this is the thing that I know Neil understands really well, is we still have a psychology that most people still subscribe to, even if they're having experiences. Psychologists that are having experiences, they know they're real, but are still being told by the model that if you start hearing things, seeing things or whatever, please go and look at your reality, because there's you've got some kind of mental aberration or whatever. And to give you an example of that, recently, a wonderful gentleman who's a researcher that's had PSTD, because he's a veteran, said to me recently that he was talking about having a physical problem, but when the doctor said, do you still believe in reptilians? Do you believe in reptilians? Not he was seeing them. He said, well, yes, because of X, Y, and Z. She then said, I'm sending a police car to pick you up, because you go to hospital. He spent 2 weeks in hospital because he believed in reptilians. That is still going on today. And it to me, it horrifies me that this is still the model that we're operating from as a mainstream society. So is it really surprising that we're not hearing the amount of people having encounters, having experiences like this, because they know full well, as soon as they talk about it in a mainstream therapeutic way, unless they've sounded out their clinical psychologist or their psychiatrist, what do? You only tell them as much as you think that they can handle. And this is what I find ludicrous when we're looking at consciousness and out-of-body experiences, and we're looking at astral travel, we're looking at near-death experience, all of these things showing that we are not just a physical container, that we have we have a spirit that is multidimensional, that is eternal. And yet we still have intelligent people that are still subscribing to that outdated, outmoded, archaic model we call psychology.
Right.
Because he's probably more in the forefront than I am.
Oh, completely, I agree with you. I mean, basically what you're saying in relation to Justin's question is that there is not, like he said, are there people that have been abused that are still having these experiences, and then people may be in like a better environment, but it's everything in between, right? It's all types of experiences. And it makes sense because, for example, somebody that has been sexually molested as a child now has the potential to conquer the sexuality and be a practitioner within this movement, right? Someone that had family that never shut them down at all has now cultivated an experience where they've been able to remember who they are their whole entire life. So it's like every single mission is valid, that we have all of these things happening, but we also view reality from the lens that we're basically brought up into, right? Whether you're a doctor and you view reality from nuts and bolts, or if you're religious, like that's the key. When it comes to reptilians, for example, I know a handful of people that were religious or still are that saw reptilian beings, and what did they think? It was the devil. And sometimes they've had sexual encounters with a reptilian. And what was it? The devil was raping me. I've heard that like at least 5 times from different people. So it's just, but ultimately it could have been a screen memory for some sort of like abduction experience even, right? So it's interesting that the wide range of what's going on, and that we all have our own belief systems, and through our belief systems, we label it what we think it is, right?
Exactly. So it would be wonderful if all these new children had the environment that supported their awareness so that they can make the difference they've come here to do. And I have talked about, having the kind of school that I believe would turn education on its head by saying to these children, here you are, you've come in with your understanding, you're being taught off planet by these beings. What is it you need us to do to provide the environment for you to do what you've come here to do? So we're supporting that, but they would be teaching us, as the children have said to me, we're coming in as the teachers. We're going to teach you how it needs to be. So a complete reversal of roles. Our job would be to provide the safe space, making sure, they eat properly and they do the human things to support their awareness while they say, look, this is what needs to happen on this planet for us to make it the way it should be.
Yeah, I feel I feel that's the reality that we want to create and that we can create, So I just wanted to say, it's been 4 years now since we've worked together, because you were on the ET Disclosure Online Summit. It was a 4-day, 10-hour-a-day online seminar, and you were one of the speakers, right? And but after that, we ran into each other. Justin was there too at a SETI a couple of years ago. But before we met you at a SETI, my wife Sol and I watched your son's documentary on. It's been a few years now, so maybe you can just tell us a little bit about it. But it was basically kind of like an investigative piece from your son to figure out whether his mom is like legit or not in regards to this extraterrestrial thing, right?
Sounds interesting.
Has he? What did he like? Tell the audience about it, if you will, and then also like what was his take after his whole investigation?
The documentary, and I had issues with this because they told me it wasn't going to be the title, but it was in the end, and that's My Mum Talks to Aliens. And I said, well, that's not quite accurate, but it is, I suppose, now. 2010, SBS, which is one of the major TV channels here, asked if I would participate with my son, who's a veterinary surgeon. So he's a scientist. And he'd already been a vet on TV, so he was used to cameras and whatever. And the producer knew that I was all into the alien thing. And his concept was that what do you do when you have two people with a different perspective on reality and different belief system, et cetera, and the dynamics that go with that. So it wasn't totally focused on the UFO ET experiencer as much as my relationship with my son, showing him why I believed these individuals. And I mean, it was a good concept because I meet so many families where one partner believes in it absolutely and the other one doesn't want to know, goes into denial, or, and that causes so much conflict, as we know in so many families, where I get an experience of saying, Mum and Dad don't want to hear me, my friends think I'm crazy, and they feel isolated, etc. So we went through where I did a regression with a gentleman who lives here, who then took a lie detector test. The thing that issue with that one was they were testing him on his hypnosis rather than his conscious memory. So he was conflicted, and it didn't come out in the way that it should have done. And I actually talked to the guy who did the polygraph, and he said, well, actually, you're correct, Mary. It's going to be harder for them to be so certain if it's come through hypnosis. So I was a bit annoyed about that because that wasn't part of the documentary. But the second one, Peter Curry, who had what they call the alien hair attached to his body after an experience, he came out with the polygraph saying absolutely. The interesting thing was that my son has always, he's been very honoring of my experiences, but he also didn't really want to go into it. It's like the science part of him, the scientist part of him was struggling with mum being so different and being unconventional, and also exploring something that he was still mixed about. I did it was a terrible debate in the sense we got 8 minutes each, and one of them was the astrophysicist Charlie Limeweaver, who basically treated it as a bit of fun. He didn't take it seriously, so it was all very it was very mocking. My son was furious because someone had actually treated his mum like that. So it was more his protection of me more than anything else, which was lovely. But we went, and he said that the lights that I showed in that documentary were for him the most compelling. Although at the end of the day, he said, you should have shown that, mum, in that whole event. He said, rather than try and say so much in a short time. But at the end of the day, he sort of said, mum, okay, I get it. I get that, this is a reality to you. It is certainly compelling, but I really don't want to hear any more about it. I really don't. I'm done. And I actually respect that. He's actually a lot more open than appeared in that documentary, because he's experienced certain things that he can't dismiss. So on another level, but I don't really want to go there, was his thing. And in fact, he said, I don't want to hear about UFOs for a long time, mum, after the filming of that documentary. But what was good about it, it's been shown many times on SBS over the years, but also it's been shown in Europe and what have you, where it's been dubbed. And I still get emails from people saying, that's been my experience, my family didn't want to hear it, or whatever. So it was a very almost lighthearted look at this reality, but in a way that showed the dynamics between families. And that to me is very relevant, as you know, Neil, in terms of the people coming, particularly religious wise. And the reason I say that, I've had a number of emails from people who said, my family are a particular religion. I know I'm a starseed. I'm having connections with them, but I can't tell my parents because they think I'm giving away our religion, and that confronts them. And one young man actually told me that he was considering committing suicide because he couldn't tell his parents the truth, that he couldn't believe in what they believe because of his own experiences. He said, I would break their heart, Mary, and I really don't want to be here. And that is particularly concerning to me, is when you're faced with that. But luckily in my book, in The New Human, I've got a chapter which I call the God chapter. And I've got two ministers of religion, one of them that lives in Australia. And he came to see me with his own experiences. He'd been a minister for 40 years, Christian minister. And he said, Mary, I feel like I've been a hypocrite throughout my ministry, because I've had past life recall. I've seen these beings. He said, but I have never been able to own it. And he actually, in my book, he writes about his truth and saying, I have to own my experiences now. And the way that they've managed to bring it into a more open perspective within their Christianity is what they talk about. And you can do that, but you just have to look at it with a more modern context in a new way, because it hasn't stopped them being spiritual. It has just meant that they have looked at it through a different lens. And it's a big one. Right. It's a really big one for a lot of people, as you know. And the Catholic Church doesn't have a problem with it. They have already mentioned that they believe that extraterrestrials exist. but there are many others that see them purely as demons rather than extraterrestrials.
We basically label things based on our perspective and our beliefs, and then we polarize them, right? It's the same experience, so we're labeling it a devil, we're polarizing it as bad, we're labeling it as a reptilian, and it's a bad reptilian, or it's a serpentine being, right? It's all basically our own perceptions. So thank you for the definite behind the scenes of that documentary, because I've been curious for a few years. I wanted to kind of know like what the mentality was behind it, and you and your son. So thank you for that. And I wanted to, before we close out, I want to share some comments from the audience. And then also we have a couple of questions here from them, okay? So we have, firstly, Josie is asking, what do we need to do to get to our new Earth? Do you have any insight on that?
My understanding is that the mere intent that you want to be part of that new higher awareness is already assisting you to do that. And it's all about intent. It's about us desiring to be more of what we can be. So if you're doing that, and then your what I call your higher self or your superconscious puts in front of you different ways that you can access more of that part of yourself. And a lot of it is all about going within and trusting your sensing, your knowing, your feeling, and trusting the fact that you have a higher awareness, an inner wisdom that's guiding you. And if that requires you to meditate or do things to help the planet in some way, that is all part of that higher part of you that is guiding you to that higher awareness. I say this, Neil, I say, you come on this planet, your soul knows exactly what to do, and it's not going to suddenly say, oh, sorry, you've missed the bus. Your soul isn't going to let you miss the bus because it's worked too hard to get you to this point. So one way or another, it's going to tell you what to do as long as you listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And if you're already asking the question, like you said, like how do I get to the new Earth? Chances are you're on that timeline, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have Nini here saying, I love asking children what they were when they were big. My youngest at 4 years old said she was a fire monster. She took it as a dragon. I was like, whoa. All right, and then Jerry said, I sometimes think I'm a starseed, but cannot make contact with my higher self. Do you have any insight on that?
Yes, the insight would be the mere fact that you're wanting to do that, but that you've got to provide the space for that to happen. And that means, again, finding, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day where you sit quietly and you put that intent out. And not only your higher self, but your team, as I call your non-human team, whether you see them as angels, spirit guides, or whatever, will actually then allow you to, or assist you by things coming to you. They may just come in an intuition or a knowing or a feeling or a sensing. Start listening to that, because that's the way that your higher self and your team will contact you.
Mm. So Jerry said here, my daughter can see spirits, but is very scared of them. And then Nini replied, maybe you should contact Mary. So can people contact you if they want you to communicate with their children or have questions?
Absolutely. And all they need to do is Google me and find my website. That it's all there. And I'm more than happy to also send out the questionnaires, one for children and there's one for adults. And the questionnaire helps the child understand more of what's going on for them as well.
Okay, perfect. So they can just come to your website and kind of find your info there, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then last question here. Karen says it takes about 20 to 25 or 25% of the world population to spiritually wake up to change the outcome. Can you discuss this, please?
Well, we're talking about the 100th monkey, aren't we? What is the percentage that needs to change on the planet before there is a shift of consciousness? Some say 5%, some say 10%. My sense is that whatever's needed will happen simply because of those that have come to the planet now, knowing that it can happen. We already know it's going to happen. We've just got to put out and continue to put out. In the same way, Neil, you're doing and everyone else is you're giving people the information through your, your talks, through your shows and what have you. And that is all a frequency that's going out and is activating this planet. And it's coming through people's channelings, it's coming through people's star languages, it's coming through artwork, it's coming through music, all of and the solar system itself, the universe, all these frequencies are coming to this planet, and all of them are activating on different levels those that are ready to move on. And the ones that choose to stay, well, they won't be affected because they've made a choice, a soul choice this time, not to move on. Mm-hmm. So it's all in, to me, it's chill, you know, just chill.
I like that. I like that. Wonderful. Well, Mary, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I think we've got a lot to think about and really a lot of positive perspectives given all the time we have available to us now. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary.
Any events or anything like that happening that you want to let anybody know about before we close out?
Next year, I've turned something down this year for the US simply because everything's a bit uncertain, but I'm going to actually do Contact in the Desert again in early. And also there's an Ancient Aliens, what do I say? Everyone's got a bit of a problem with cruises at the moment, but in March. So I'm part of that as a presenter on the Ancient Aliens one
nice.
At the moment. So that's who I can give you a heads up around.
Right.
Cool. If you get a chance, Mary, we're doing that Q&A in October that I mentioned, and I'll email you about it. So hopefully we can have you on again and do a little Q&A with you, 30-minute segment.
Absolutely, Neil. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Mary. And you can find Mary's work at alienlady.com. All of her links and contact, your information is there. Thanks again so much, Mary.
Thank you,
wonderful
Mary.
day. Stay safe and healthy out there.
Yep. Catch you later. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, everybody. Great show today. Lots to think about. I know I was just like in my inner world thinking the whole time this was going on. So this has been really fun and stimulating for me. So we will see all of you in 2 weeks' time on, I think that's the 20th, 21st.
Yeah, but I was going to ask you, I should ask you now in front of everyone, I guess.
Sure.
We have Lucy Delic, the psychedelic artist that wanted to come on. So maybe in the next 2 weeks, we'll do an impromptu event with her, right? And then we'll come on our regular schedule as well in 2 weeks from today.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm totally down for that. Let's set it up.
All right.
So, all right, everybody. So yeah, check us out. Don't forget, Stillness in the Storm. You can find all my work there. And of course, Neil, you've got portaltoascension.org.
Yep. Check us out. We have many events. We're going live all the time. Pure content, upgrading our platforms, collaborating with Stillness and many other people. This is a great time. I feel like we're doing a lot of good work and we're taking our production to the next level and joining forces. So I'm excited.
Yeah, agreed. We're going to kick butt and make this world a better place.
Straight up.
So, everybody, much love. Take care. We will see you all next time.
All right. Bye, everyone.